Hi everyone, welcome back to a new episode of the New Unfiltered. So before I get into this is not a product placement. However, I have the co-founder of my absolute favorite deodorant brand here, Sherry Jhawar. She is the co-founder of Blended Strategy Group as well as Nez. Now, a little backstory on how I found Nez. I was at an event over the summer, I think last year in LA, and it was in a gift bag.
Yes.
And in particular, you get all these free stuff, whatever, another day, another dollar. I tried this deodorant, I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. And I had the tiny one. And when I looked it up, I was familiar with Blended because of Allison, but I had honestly never heard of Nez before. And when I started kind of looking into the company, and I just was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing.
Yeah.
So you are a founder, you are one of the founding members also of EOS, which is Evolution of Smooth,
yes,
which is one of my favorite lip balm companies.
Yes.
And so I've got so many questions for you, Sherry, but start me off to when you were a kid. So you're an immigrant, you come from an immigrant family. Where were you born and raised?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I just love that you're a natural fan of this brand and that you knew our agency. And that you got it kind of like in the wild through a gift bag, and here we are today, because that's the goal of like gift bag sort of sampling. So yeah, my parents immigrated. I was born and raised in the U.S., but they came here from India, and I grew up in Philly, in Philadelphia, so East Coast. And it's just I'm sure there's many people who come from. Maybe they're immigrant, maybe they moved when they were young and have immigrated themselves, or parents immigrated and they were born here. And I think, there's a lot that comes from that culture of like having parents that are sort of navigating their way around a new environment, and that gets ingrained in you as you're growing up in terms of work ethic and culture and different types of things. But yeah, I grew up out there. We moved to Southern California when I was in high school. Terrible time to move as a young girl, in the middle of high school. Hard to remake friends, but we did it. And I survived. And then I got to go to college, and I was like, thank God I get to wipe this slate clean, and, everyone's new. And I went to UCLA for college, which I absolutely loved, and sort of found myself, like got comfortable in my own skin. So I always say, I was speaking at a high school for International Women's Day recently, and one of the questions was like, "Oh, what happens if you don't get into your first choice college?" and these types of things. I'm like, first of all, you have to just decide if college is the right experience that you want for yourself. It's not for everyone. Like, I have a business partner who dropped out of college, and she and I have ended up in the exact same place in life, and have two wildly different experiences. And I think the world of the experience that she's had, and she thinks the world of the education I've had. Yeah. So, it really first comes down to that, but I will say that my college experience made me. And so if you do choose to do it, like, it's about the people, it's not about the place, it's about like the environment. It doesn't matter if it's the top school in the world or the top, or the bottom school in the world, because you're going to get a great experience. So I went to UCLA, absolutely loved it. And then went into finance. Like a lot of certain types of cultures want kids to be doctors, engineers, things like that. I definitely went into college pre-med thinking like that's the pathway, because my parents are South Asian and that's what you do. And it was either you're a doctor or an engineer. My dad's an engineer, and I was like, no, I don't want to be either. My older brother was in finance, so at least that was something my parents knew. So I was like, okay, I'll go down that path. Did it. I worked in investment banking at Goldman Sachs, so liked it, but it wasn't quite for me. Fortunate enough to have gotten into Harvard Business School, and that was an incredible experience. And I completely pivoted to marketing from there, and that sort of created this pathway to where, my whole career at EOS was L'Oreal, then EOS, then Blended, and as a...
So fascinating. I grew up in a super small town in Eastern Connecticut.
Oh, amazing. So you're an East Coaster too.
I am. And LA is so different.
So different.
Wildly different.
Yes.
But I've spent a decent amount of time in Philadelphia, and I definitely, it's a cute place, but it's also so different than here. Do you go back at all?
Not really, because we don't really have any family there. My brother recently took his daughter, my niece, there just to show her why, we grew up, the house we grew up, all this stuff. It was cute and stuff, and they had a good time, because he's 8 years older than me, so he really grew up there. He went to high school there, elementary school, whatever, junior high school, and then he went to college in Philadelphia. So his whole life was there before he ended up moving to the West Coast too. And so, but I ended up living in New York for almost, so I was in Boston for business school, and then I lived in New York for 11 years. So I spent 13 years back on the East Coast before I moved back to California. It'll be 9 years ago this summer that I moved back to California.
So you got a decent amount of time and you like it here.
I do like it here. It took a while to get readjusted. It's funny. I was considered, when I was in New York, everyone was like, oh, you're so laid back. Like, makes sense. You're from California. You're so laid back. You're so chill. And then I moved. So I always thought I was chill because I was like the chill New Yorker. But I moved to California 9 years ago. And I was like, oh my God, you're so intense. Like, oh, wow. Like, you write bullet points in your emails. I was like, oh my God, is that not a thing in California?
I'm the same, and it's not a thing. And I don't know. And a lot of people are not fans of the West Coast if they're from the East Coast.
Right.
That's the difference. You're like type A, you're on it.
Yeah, you're just on it. And I'm like, I'm not trying to be current. I'm just trying to be organized in my email. And so I got this advice from an old boss, which I thought was funny, he's like, sandwich your bullets with a bunch of smiley faces. So now my emails are like all these emojis. Here are the bullets and all these emojis.
So why did they give you that advice?
Literally because my first year I kept being told I was intense, and I was like really upset. I was really sad. I was like, I thought I was laid back, and then I realized I was laid back for a New Yorker, but I'm intense for an LA person, and so I don't fit anywhere. And so I was like, I don't know, maybe I made a mistake coming back here. My family's here. This is where I want to be, and I like went and saw one of the co-CEOs, VOs at the time, and I was like, I don't know what to do. And he was like, sandwich your emails.
Yeah, that's so funny. I mean, it's actually fascinating because I think a lot of people also would think you would never say to a man, right? They had a lot of smiley faces in their email. So did you feel
you're
like
so right, Alexa.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Did you feel like when they said you're too intense? Because I get told that all the time. How did that make you feel?
It literally actually makes my blood boil. There's like a couple things that I've told in life that I'm like, you'll never say that to a man. Like, you're intense, because intensity and for a man is considered a great thing. For a woman, it's like, that's a bad thing. Oh, you're so energetic. Okay, so do you want me to be like monotone? Like, I'm passionate. I love what I do. Like, why is energy down there? And then I get told I'm loud a lot, and I am. Like, my whisper is like my whisper is an outside voice. Like, and I realize that about myself. But like, again, it comes from passion.
Yeah.
And I don't think a man would ever be told he's loud, like, ever. And it's such a female, like, oh, you're like so loud. Oh, you're so smiley. Like, oh, you're so like. Okay, so do you want me to have resting bitch face?
I adore you already. I resonate with this so much. I get all the time, you're loud, you talk too fast, you're too intense. I'm passionate.
Yeah,
and
I'm also passionate.
And you want things, I feel like I also want things done a certain way.
Yes.
And when it doesn't get done a certain way.
Yes.
Yelling at people, but also like, why are you not doing it?
No, I agree. And like, I always say it's like, it's leadership with love and the thought of like, yes, it comes with an idea of perfection or how I want things done or, whatever it is. Like, yes, it's also meant to be like, hey, if we're going from A to Z, I don't want you to go like all over the place. Like, let's get there in the fastest place. And like, this is going to help you grow in your career. So, organization, bullet pointed emails, like things that are just sort of like, here's the feedback. If it's clouded in all these like softness and everything, it's like, the message sometimes gets lost of like what it was that like how they can actually improve so that next time it's done even better and we're improving the workflow.
I've got one question I want to ask you before we get into more of the career-driven stuff.
Yeah.
And I bring this up because both of my ex-boyfriends, I have like a type for Indian guys.
I love it.
So you know anyone. So, but I will say that I have learned a lot about the like being a child of an immigrant. And I mean, my mom immigrated here from England, but like there's no cultural difference.
Right.
And so I've also connected with a lot of young women who also come from immigrant families, wherever it may be, in Turkey. And a lot of them struggle to really find a place for themselves with their confidence in comparison to what their parents want them to do versus, this new day and age. And so I'm curious if you have any advice for that kind of young adult or how you got through that growing up.
It's a really good question, and it is like I think one of the hardest things that people go through, and I hope for as more and more generations come through that there is more confidence in that. And I was lucky in that I had an older brother at least who didn't become a doctor, so then it was like, okay, well that admits it. But then at the same time it was extra pressure of like, okay, one child to become a doctor, our second will. And it was like, oh no, that's not happening either. But so there was some of that paved the road, but it really was just sort of being like, but this is what I want to do. Like, this is where I feel the passion. I have a dear friend who's, you know, who is a dear friend. She's an influencer and brand founder. Her name is Deepika Mutiala. She's a South Asian influencer. And she has a brand called Live Tinted. And I'm actually on the board of her brand too. And I think she does such a great job in her platform because she has a strong audience about talking about like, oh, my dad, like, you know, wanted me to go to med school, or wanted me to go to Harvard Business School, or wanted me to do this. I didn't get to go to Harvard Business School, but I'm speaking at Harvard Business School as an entrepreneur. Like, you know, it's just sort of showing how like she's made her parents so proud, even though she didn't follow the pathway, because they were like, what do you mean you're going to be a beauty influencer? Like, that's a beauty influencer. And she's, you know, now she's a CEO of her own brand, and it's at Ulta, and she's done so well for herself. And they're obviously so proud of her. And I think she, like, it's so nice. Like, I have a lot of South Asian friends who have kids. They're like, oh, wow, it's so cool to see, like, a South Asian paving the way in such a public forum about, like, you know, be strong and confident in what you want to do. And so I just encourage to have those honest discussions with your parents. At the end of the day, I always say, parents want the best for their kids. They want them to just be happy. And so when they want you to go down a career path, it's because they think of that as security for you financially and stability for jobs, because that's what they struggled with most. Like, I remember my dad, like, you know, it's like losing a job when I was a kid, and how hard that was for my parents. Like how are they going to make ends meet and stuff like that. And so it was like their desire for me to be at like the same company for 25 years or 30 years was because that was stability, that for them was like, she'll make a good salary, she'll be there, she'll be taken care of. And that's just not how the world works today. And so it's just having those conversations and knowing that your parents want the best for you and are supportive. They just aren't necessarily knowledgeable of the different pathways that you can do.
And a lot of times parents also don't really know how to talk to their kids about a lot of these like more heavy hitting topics. Body image, I would assume.
Yes.
You know, the like being a kid of an immigrant.
No, absolutely. I mean, like, I think a lot of the different cultures, different types of ethnicities and stuff, like talking about certain things. I mean, South Asians don't talk about anything. They don't talk about sex. They don't talk about, like, you know, body image. They don't talk about a lot of things. Like, they're just not things that are talked about in a household, and you just sort of learn them as you go from friends or other people and stuff, or, you know, like the older sister of a friend that tells you something and stuff. And so it is just trying to meet your parents halfway to start the dialogue with them and let them know, like, hey, I want to ask advice, or I want to talk about this. I'm really fortunate. I feel so lucky. I'm very close to my parents, particularly my mom and I have a very, like, deep bond, and, like, have shared a lot at a young age. Sometimes I think she realized, like, oh God, I asked the question and you were so honest, Sherry. Like, now, like, it will be don't ask, don't tell. Like, let's not do that again. And I'm like, well, you asked.
Yeah.
So if you ask it, I don't lie to you, Mom. So be careful what you ask.
They must be so proud of you then.
They are. They're really, really proud of me, and they're really supportive. And I, like I said, I feel so lucky and so blessed that my family dynamic is really important to me, and that they are, like, just so supportive, and there's no like limits to their support, like in everything, you know, whether it's like the way my dad is sending me press release, like, he's like, did you see this article on Nez? I'm like, yeah, Dad, I saw that. Like, thank you so much. Like, but he's like sitting there Googling Nez on his phone at night and like seeing stuff and be like, this is a great write-up on Nez. And it's just so sweet. And they're equally, you know, the same with my brother, who's had great success as well and stuff. And so, you know, I think there's a lot of pride that they have in that they had two kids who went to Harvard.
Yeah.
So they're like, oh, we did something right.
You always ask me, like, why are you so on Indian guys? And I'm like, because in comparison to American fratty guys, like, you guys have strong family values.
Yes.
You're close with your parents. Mm-hmm. There's, you know, I think when you're a parent and you instill a certain amount of expectation on your child, whereas my parents are like, there was really no expectation, and I did the whole entrepreneur thing fine. But I just find different cultures, in particular, you know, there's just, you have to, like,
there's certain things. Yeah, like, I always say, I have a lot of friends that are Jewish, and I've dated Jewish guys and stuff, and I'm like, oh, the Jews and the Indians were just 4 shades of brown away from each other. Like, that's it.
Exactly.
We get married under 4 pillars. Yeah. The son-mother dynamic is always a little, like, close for comfort, but, you know, but it's also like, you want to, like, if you're, you know, you want like if you're dating men, you're like, oh, I want a guy who treats his mom so well, like, you know, and stuff. So you like him, like I'm an annoying mother-in-law, but like, you know, it's just so funny. So I'm like, yeah, the Jews and the Indians, just 4 shades. So I'm always like, I'm a Hindu.
Yeah, my other type is Jewish guys because my dad's Jewish, so I love Jewish guys. All right, anyway, okay, so you're living in Philly, then you come here, and then you go back to go to Harvard.
Yep, I come here. I'm here for high school, part of high school, college, a little bit of work, go out east to go to Boston for Harvard, and then move to New York for a job at L'Oreal.
And what was the role?
It was an assistant brand manager, which is like a first level sort of out of business school role in marketing. And my first project, everyone, like a lot of people who I know from L'Oreal laugh at this, and like there was a big name of hair, big brand of mass hair color of look preference. And it's like a lot of people use it to cover their grays and stuff like that. And it's a big seller in like the drugstores and stuff. And so I worked on that brand, home hair color. I was 25 years old, so I was really young, because I went to business school really young. I went at 23. So I was 25. I show up, I have like crazy razor cut short hair, like everywhere. It looked like my mom had sex with a bumblebee and, you know, birthed me, because it was like chunky yellow blonde highlights with my black hair. And like, it was like crazy. And I'm 25, so I'm an even more passionate, energetic version of myself. And my first thing was to rename all the preference shades, like fun names, like they called them fantasy names. And it was like, oh, it's a fantasy names. Like, oh, like cafe au lait, toffee almond, mocha. And I'm like, this is my job. Like, I get to do this. And like, I like was so excited. And so there's like a woman who I'm very dear friends with now, who says like, I went down to go see her because she was the expert on color for hair and stuff, and like how color spectrum worked. And someone told me, go see this woman, Patty. And I go see Patty, and I tell Patty, I introduce myself, and Patty was like, oh my God, another like crazy weird marketer, like whatever, who knows how long this girl's gonna last. She's like, oh my God, she's so excited to do this. And now like, she was like, oh my God, I can't believe we're such close friends. Like, and like still close, she's still very dear in my life. And like, you know, I ended up lasting at L'Oreal quite some time.
Wow, and how old were you at that point?
So I was 25 when I started at L'Oreal. I was there for just under 5 years, and I loved it. I loved everything about it. L'Oreal's not for everyone. There's some people who, you know, the culture's, you know, look, it's a beauty brand. And it was also the early 2000s, so the world was different. In 2004 and 5 and stuff, the world was very different of what was, you know, done in the workplace and stuff. And so I just thought it was really fun. I was in investment banking before. You weren't, as a woman in investment banking, I was told, I literally was told I was smiling too much. I appeared young in rooms because I was like too peppy. Like, again, things that would never be told to a man, even if that was happening. Yeah. And so I found in banking, I was so conscious of my behavior. Like, am I smiling too much? Is this jacket not boxy enough? Like, is like, you know, it's just, I use this term, I sandpapered myself. I like dulled myself down to fit. And when you do that, you not only are not being true to who you are and able to be your best self and best at what you do, you start focusing so much on doubling yourself down. You're not even focused on the work, so you start making a lot of mistakes. And so I didn't even know what it meant to be yourself until I stepped into those L'Oreal walls, and I just belonged. I just was like, oh, this is what it's like to just like be and be so validated for your work and who you are, and you're literally just being you. Like, I was just I was my smiley, peppy self, and everyone loved that energy and found it infectious, and not in like a bad COVID way, but like, you know, in a good way. And like, it's like, they were like, oh, the energy is so infectious. The passion is so real. Like, you know, someone described it as like, Sherry's the type of person that like, she's so excited if you told her to go like pick up every, you know, brown or purple piece of paper from the floor, she'd be excited about doing that, because it's like, I was just excited about what it was and where I was doing it. And so that's like definitely advice to any listeners. And is like, if you feel that you're in an environment that you are dulling yourself down, or you're not able to be yourself, and you feel like just some sort of level of uncomfort, you're not in the right place, you will find your place. Like, find it. I promise you will find it. And
oh, that's so inspiring. Do you remember back then with the starting salary? I mean, you're 25, you're in New York. you remember what that salary was?
I mean, so I was post business school, so it was a little like it was definitely higher. I mean, I know my first job out of college in investment banking, I think was that was in 2000, so was maybe 45 or 50, $1,000, and like whether you lived in New York or LA, that was it. That's why people at Goldman and other investment banks, they would live in like 1-bedroom converts, they called them in New York, where you get this little 1-bedroom and you throw up like a faux wall, and all of a sudden it's 2 bedrooms, type of thing. So yeah, I mean, I think it was in the 80s maybe, it was probably around that, and the bonuses and stuff like that. But definitely a different era in the early 2000s.
I've interviewed so many founders who go from the corporate or finance background to doing something so much more creative.
Yes.
So it seems so common that successful entrepreneurs always have some dabble or something in finance. I don't know why that is.
I think it's also like it's a good training ground. I always say like investment banking or people who've done management consulting and things like that. Like I also liked it because it was like college transplanted, and I was like someone who liked some structure and being navigated a little bit at that time, especially in my life, which is interesting because now I can navigate myself and I'm an entrepreneur. But it was nice because like big investment banks and big management consulting firms, like 300, 400, 500 people start at the same time. So it's like, again, it was like you move from college to that and you're like, oh, this is a fun training, and you're going out to happy hours and everyone's starting fresh and wants to make friends. And then certainly with the long hours, you're in the trenches together, ordering dinners and stuff. And it's really fun. But it's like, I always say it's like the best thing at the bottom of my resume, because it says something, like, and when I see that type of thing on the bottom of a resume, I just sort of know those people must have a certain type of training, work ethic, process, stamina, that tells me something about someone. I'm not saying that's the only way to show that, but it is like something that I recognize. It's the same way that today, because I'm still in beauty, if I see someone's resume that has L'Oreal on it and there's a certain number of years or more, I'm like, oh wow, I know what you are capable of managing and how, the cultural aspects of it's a French-owned company, so there's a lot of personalities to navigate and cultures to navigate, especially as you get more senior. So it tells me something about EQ as well as, which is like emotional quotient, as well as your ability to, do roll up your sleeves to do work. Like L'Oreal, like people are workers. You hustle. You're not like you're a doer for a long time.
So would you say that if you're listening to this and you're an aspiring entrepreneur, that perhaps something in finance or consulting, it will be beneficial for like a future as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I mean, I think something in finance is good, or at least taking like even like a basic class and stuff like that. I know like even like other entrepreneurs that I know who don't have that type of background, like they really feel like they want that. And so they get that usually from either a co-founder or someone else on the team or an advisor or something like that. Even my business partner, Allison, like she didn't have a finance background at all. And she was always so intimidated by finance people. Like she was like, oh my God, finance people, like it sounds so scary. And I don't know, we were like we started our agency in summer of 2015. So maybe I think summer of 2016 or end of 2016, I can't quite remember, a private equity firm that I knew, one of the partners that invited us to speak at a summit that they were having. And I was like, oh, let's go speak at this summit. It's going to be cool. And she was like, what do you mean we're going to speak at a private equity summit? Like, who are we to do that? Like, she was like, maybe you, but like, why am I going? And I'm like, no, come on, it's going to be fun. Like, it's going to be great. Trust me. They want us to speak about influencer marketing, educate their portfolio companies. It's our expertise. It's all good. And just like, yeah, I just don't want to come across dumb to these people. I'm like, why would you come across dumb? You're an expert in this. Like, and she was like, okay. And then we go up, we speak. Everyone's so interested in what we're talking about, and she has a blast. I could see the energy rise through her, and she was like, wait, this is not like as scary as I thought it was. Like, these people, like, they're not like, I can learn this and stuff. And she's gotten her, like, quote unquote MBA through the job, like the way she can now read a P&L from top to bottom and understand cash flow and understand how things work, or the brands that we've taken equity stakes in, like understanding how capital tables work and stuff. Like, she understands it just as well as someone who didn't have a finance background, who does have a finance background. Like, she knows it as well as I do. Maybe I have a little bit more hard skills just because I learned it in Excel in that way, but she can just as much like articulate it as I can.
that balance also must be quite good, right? Because you've got the background and you know the numbers and the way that you've like really been taught about it in school, and she's kind of more, would you say the creative side, or would you say that's both of you?
We're both creative in different ways. I always say, because people like always are like, oh, you're so different, and like, and you know, like, yes, there's a balance, but like, how does it work and stuff? And it's like, we're ultimately actually not that different. One, we have the same work ethic, but two, we're both brand builders. She just happened to be a human brand builder her whole career, and being a talent manager and coming from that space. And I was a product brand builder. So you know, but at the end of the day, when you create the Venn diagram of the two of us and like what it means to be a product brand builder and a human brand builder and where they cross over, it's a really special place. And so we both have a creative lens, but in different ways, and it comes to fruition at different parts. We're also both very good at different things. It's almost like I couldn't find a better yin to my yang, in that like when I'm like, maybe I'm not like as like inspired creatively by a certain client, I just can't quite come up with ideas. She usually is, and vice versa. Like, it's like, oh, I get that one so well. Or our big corporate clients, like, she loves the inner workings of that, versus I'm like, I love it, but I'm like, oh, corporate. I worked in corporate for so long. It's not as inspiring for me as the indie brands that I'm like, you get gritty with, and you get down with the founder and things like that. So we're able to really balance each other well. Also, weirdly, when she's having a down week, like when it's like, you know, every entrepreneur goes through the roller coasters of life and stuff. And she's just like, you know, like, ugh, everyone's out to get me, and what am I doing? And it's imposter syndrome. It's like up the wazoo and stuff. I'm usually on a high, and vice versa. Like when I'm like feeling splat on the ground and I'm like, I'm a pancake. I can't even like, I can't do anything. I feel squashed. She's usually high, so we're able to really pick each other up. And it's like, I'm like so grateful whatever higher force has made it that way, that we're not both down at the same time.
Yeah, no, that's so important, especially because co-founders go south.
Yes.
So it's nice that there's that balance.
Yes.
But with EOS, so what transpired with that? So you said you were with the founding members.
Yeah, so I was the first employee under the founders. Pre-revenue, pre-products, like literally everyone assumes like, oh, well, you must have seen the egg and known it was a winner. I was like, no, like they knew the name of the brand and that they wanted to disrupt what were very like boring commoditized categories. And they had those categories listed where they, you know, knew that they felt that there was some ripeness for disruption. And it was just like a leap of faith. Like I have this belief in worst case scenario, I call it. What's the worst case scenario? If I take this risk and I go do this, what happens if it doesn't work out? And doesn't work out doesn't necessarily mean like you failed at it or it wasn't successful on venture. It could be just in personality, you weren't happy with it. It could be, yes, like maybe the venture did go south. It could be a lot of different things. And so what happens to you? Like, can you go back to your old world of what you were doing? Like, because I was new big corporate, was always there. Like, if I leave big corporate and I go do this startup and it goes into the ether, no problem. Like, I can always go back to L'Oreal. Like, the door is open. I'm not leaving on bad terms, right? You know, I always knew my goal was to end up back in California at some point. I was like, there are lots of companies out there. And so I was like, let's just take this leap of faith. It was a true leap of faith. I just liked the guys who were starting it. I thought they seemed like honest, good guys. They were, and they are. And I just thought like it was a good time in my career to try something like that. And if it didn't work, no problem. Corporate was there and I'll be a corporate for the rest of my life. And it does. It's interesting. My parents were a little bit like, we just figured out what you do for a living, you know, like, and you're doing so well at L'Oreal, why would you leave? And I was like, I don't know, I think I want to do this. And they're like, okay. And my brother thought I was a lunatic, like, why was I doing this? But he was like, okay. And then, you know, it turned out to be a great experience, and we developed the egg-shaped lip balm. You know, I brought that to market, and it was really game-changing for the industry, especially at that time. And I ran marketing and innovation, and, you know, we ran really lean, and it was truly this what they call, you know, a family work culture. And just, you know, I mean, we were really small for a really long time, even though the business got bigger. We just all got down and dirty and did the work. Like, there was no egos. Everyone was able to do their jobs. We were all experts in our field and very collaborative with each other. And And we had a lot of fun doing it. I mean, to the point that even I got sick while I was there. I was diagnosed with breast cancer. Thank you. Thank God, knock on wood, I'll soon be 13 years in remission, which is crazy. I had just turned 32, no family history. I wasn't, getting mammograms. I was 32, but in just a normal woman's checkup. So please book your pap smears, go do that stuff. She was just doing a physical exam and she felt a tiny lump and she was like, oh, just get a sonogram. I'm sure it's nothing. You're so young, you have no family history, but it unraveled and it turned out it was breast cancer. And I remember going to the day I found out, just walking aimlessly to the office, from there. Cause I was just what am I going to do? I just going to go into the office. And I just was wet. And one of the co-CEOs just looked at me and knew and he took me aside, hugged me, and I just cried. And he was like, what do you want to do? And I was like, oh, I don't even know the pathway plan yet and what treatment I have to have and stuff. He's like, okay, well, do you want time off? Whatever you need. And I was like, no, I need to work. I have to work. That's my stability is my work. And I worked through the whole thing and I had chemo, radiation, surgery, everything. And they just respected it because I said, I want to talk, you can ask me how I'm doing. I'm not shy to talk about it, but I don't want to be treated special. I don't want to be treated like I'm sick. I'm treating an illness, but I'm fine. My mind is fine. I have energy to do this. I will tell you if I don't. I will tell you when it becomes too much, but I don't want you to assume it's too much ever for me. And they fully respected that.
So it was early stage.
It was early stage enough, but I still had to, because I was so young, they wanted to make sure that they didn't miss a beat, in terms of you never want to, ideally you don't want to look back at 60 years old and be like, gosh, if we had just done chemo, maybe this recurrence wouldn't happen and stuff. And they can't guarantee anything, but it was let's just go full gamut while you're young enough, your body can take it, and it's still a lot, no matter how young you are. But thankfully I was early enough that the drugs could be effective, and I'm a big proponent of how we help revamp our healthcare system in this country, because I was very fortunate that I had great insurance. So when I look back at how little I had to spend for my treatment, I know how lucky I am.
Yeah. Okay, so you're at EOS, and then did they get acquired? Are they still?
No, so they're still independent. It was it's a very successful company, and it was self-funded by the guys who founded it.
Two guys?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And there was actually a third co-founder who was involved early on, who left in the early stages of the brand to focus on another brand we were developing that the founders were developing at the same time, and he took that one to go develop that one while we focused on EOS and stuff, and he actually ended up selling that business, which was great for him. And so, but yeah, the other two founders didn't want to sell the business, and we're having a lot of fun running it because they didn't have outside investors at the time, and it was really great for me. I'd been there 8 years, and I loved what I did, but my role had shifted to much more of a it was a much bigger company. We were global. I was setting up infrastructure internationally, and I just felt like I wasn't getting to do the cool marketing anymore. I'm managing a much bigger team, and that's what I realized becomes a common theme for me, that when the job starts turning more more HR and managerial, which I love managing and leading and guiding people and mentoring them. But when I don't get to spend my time doing the marketing and doing the work, I am not as inspired by my job. So I have to move on to the next thing that ends up being something small again. And so that's where I found I needed something small again. And I was, I said to the guys, one day I was just guys, I think it's time, I've got to move on. And Allison, my now business partner, she was she was someone who I'd been working with through EOS. I'd met her through mutual contacts in the entertainment space and stuff, and she was helping navigate me to Hollywood to help a lot of things that, get the product in a lot of cool people's hands. So a lot of people discovered the brand through Miley Cyrus music video and a lot of different things that they sort of saw that were part of the cultural zeitgeist at that time and stuff. And so she had her third son and was if I'm going to leave my kids every day, I want to feel like I'm building something incredible. I love my kids so much. I love my work. She had learned so much from her family business, and she's like, you know, I'm ready to do something on my own. I have like all my family support, like, you know, that I can do this. And I want a business partner who's really different than me. And I love how we work together in all the stuff we've done. And, you know, I was like, you know, like people, if you Google her, like she's from, like she's a pretty prominent family.
And I actually don't know the family she's from.
It's a prominent music management family behind the scenes, like very much so. Like they haven't, they're not out there trying to beat their chest and be like, look, we do this and we do that. But they manage some of the biggest artists in the world.
Like a Universal?
Or it's an independent management company, but it's like everyone from the Eagles to Harry Styles to Cardi B, and it's like just an incredible, you know, to Meghan Trainor to Gwen Stefani to rising artists like a Tate McRae and like stuff like, you know, it's just a cool roster. You know, Stevie Nicks, like it's just awesome, and like their fathers like and mother were involved in rebuilding the Forum in LA and stuff, and it's just like really cool stuff, like. But they're really down to earth people, like, you know, like so down to earth, like it's crazy. But it's also like you look at her Instagram, you're like, wait, you're just hanging out with Kim Kardashian today, like, you know, like it's just like you know, her life is just different than what my life was and stuff. And so I was like, why do you want me as your business partner? Like who am I? Like, you're Allison Statter. Like, you're an Azoff kid. Like, I don't, you know, like, what do you need me for? Like, and stuff. And she's like, what do you, like, no. Like, she's like, what? Like, she was like, we both felt like we hit the lottery. Like I'm meeting someone who I feel like has all this access in pop culture and entertainment. And I sort of was very inspired by like what things were in the cultural zeitgeist and stuff like that, and I felt like that was like the ways marriage, like marry brand and the cultural zeitgeist is like the future. And she was very much like, wow, this girl who has this type of corporate background and helped, you know, like bring a brand from zero to a pop culture phenomenon and to like such a big business in EOS to like you know, a traditional education and stuff like that, like is willing to be business partners with me. We both just felt like, how lucky did we get? And we, you know, we started Blended together, you know, at that time. And it was so she had mentioned it to me and approached me about like the idea of starting something together. And it was like, you know, that perfect timing of, it's probably the right time to move on. Like, and again, worst case scenario, I move back to LA and I do this, at least I'm closer to my family. If I don't like it, if we don't get along, like there was all these like potential risks. Like we didn't actually know each other super well. Sometimes I joke it was like an arranged marriage, like, you know, but okay, like I can always go back to another startup. I can always again go back to corporate. Like it's like, what's the worst case scenario?
I really appreciate that you have that mindset, because I find so many people do not embark upon entrepreneurship.
Yes.
Because they're so scared of the what if.
The what ifs.
I don't think you need a plan B. Like, I don't have a plan B. I ain't going to call it. I'm an entrepreneur my whole life. I mean, this may fit, like, right?
Who knows? And it's just like the pathways are so different today. Like I have an 18-year-old niece who I adore, and I'm like, the world's your oyster. Yeah. Like in terms of what you decide you want to do. You like, there's so many new professions and career paths like that didn't exist when I was growing up that you can have, like from being a content creator to being a, you know, someone who loves social and does it behind the scenes for businesses versus doing it where you're in front of camera to, you know, building brands to, you know, to like going the corporate route. Like, and like, you know, and I'm so glad that my brother and his wife are so, supportive of any action she goes in, even though my brother has been very traditional background and was in banking for a really long time and has been at the same private equity firm for 25 years. Like he is that guy who's been like very stable and very steady and stuff. And his wife was at the same company for a very long time too, before she stopped working and spending more time with the family and stuff. Like they're not like, oh, you must go down this path and stuff like that at all. They're just like, you see what your auntie does, like you see this, like you see what grandma and grandpa have done, like, you know, what do you, like whatever you want, you can do, and stuff. And so I just think that's why I hope that as, so you're going back to now one of your earlier questions of like, how does the narrative start to change with parents and stuff, like, I hope that starts to become the next generation, the second generation of immigrant parents, like that, like the, like that generation, the Gen Alphas and the Gen Zs today are having, you know, conversations with their parents that maybe, you know, that like their parents couldn't have with their parents.
Yeah. Especially because the times have changed, right? Yes. And with the media and whatnot, you see a lot.
You see it. Plus, like
I mean, I said to my brother once, you can't deny how much money people can make in these careers. Like, you can't say like, oh no, like you're gonna be living on, you know, top ramen and like, you know, whatever, like, you know, like you're gonna be sitting here eating, you know, nothing, like bologna sandwiches all day or whatever, like the version of that is for today's generation. I don't even know. Like, there's no denying the amount of success you can have and how much financial success, personal, like rewarding success and financial success can follow in all these career paths. So there's no limit anymore.
Yeah, no, I agree. But beauty, it seems, was always something ingrained in your...
It really was. Like, it really, like, I didn't
this
think...
also reminds me a bit of
Like, yeah, it's got like a rounded shape and like things like that. There's a lot of studies on how people like curves. They like to hold curves. They like rounded, soft edges and stuff. So like, there's a lot of that like there. So when you think of like the original Method bottle and the teardrop that it was and how people were gravitated towards that, or one of the early, before like there was things like Stanley cups and stuff, like one of the earliest water bottles was a bobble bottle, it was called, and it was like very rounded and stuff. So people like curves and stuff. And so we also wanted to design something that just like hugs your armpit, feels nice in your hand. And everything. But yeah, beauty is definitely ingrained in me.
Why?
I think it's just, it's fast. That's what it is. It's like you're constantly innovating and you get to be really creative with it, but like you can launch products faster, like with food. And now with traditional household goods and food have gotten faster, but 20 years ago, those like traditional food companies were launching a new product every year at best. And like traditional like household goods, like laundry detergent were launching like every 2 years something. Beauty was launching every 6 months. Now beauty launches every month, but like in brands. And so there's this speed and the energy that comes with it. And it was just, L'Oreal was so fun for me. And then it just kind of just kept flowing and stuff. But like at Blended, we have clients across all categories, from beverage to food. Like we have Coke, we have Shake Shack.
And it's marketing, PR?
It's marketing, PR, paid social media strategy, content strategy, paid media. It's like we say it's the full marketing communications wheel. So even if you hire us for just one area, like let's say you hire us for influencer marketing, you get an expert in PR still on your team, so that like if PR is a KPI around your influence marketing, we're making sure we're giving you we're suggesting influencers who have that ability to be PRable. Or if we're doing your content strategy, and if we're not running your paid media, that we're having that expert at the table to say these pieces of content are probably really good for paid too. So we did it 2 ways with end cards and things like that sort of result in a conversion to buy. So we like having that ecosystem. Or you can hire us for being a full-blown marketing engine for you. So we have especially some rising brands that are talent-backed, that we are their marketing arm from that. Like Give by Gwen Stefani, Give Beauty, which is color cosmetics brand by Gwen Stefani that's sold at Sephora. Like we are their entire marketing arm for them. And from strategy to activation to PR to, events, social, different elements of things and stuff like that. We have a creative director at Give that works with us and stuff, and she's amazing. And then the actual marketing activation comes from Blended.
It's wild to me, and I think a lot of people don't realize how much goes on behind the scenes with these kind of companies. And I mean, you can bring so much background, right, to Nez. Like, you waited. I feel like you got the perfect moment, right? You waited, you have years of experience, all the celebrities, like everything to make a company fucking like amazing.
Yeah, I hope so. But I will say, and I say this because again, like with the humility and honesty, and that like even with all that experience, you'll make mistakes, and it's okay. It's the journey. Like I beat myself up a lot about that. Like, oh, why did I do this? In hindsight, I would have done this differently. And I spent this money on that. Like I want that money back. Like, why did I make that mistake? And like all experience in the world and no experience, you'll still learn. And you'll learn from each other. And so trust all of that. And like, there's no perfect time to do it other than when you feel it in your gut. And like with Nez, I remember coming into the office one day and going to Allison's desk, and I was like, hey, I want to chat with you about something. And she's like, okay. I'm like, I need to do this brand. Like, I can't shake this idea. Like, I've sat with it now for like 4 months thinking like, okay, I'll lose the interest in wanting to do this. Like, you know, it's just a whim. It's just an idea. Like, but I can't shake it. I think it's a really good idea. And like, I really feel I need to develop this, but I want to do it with you. Because our first reaction was, wait, are you telling me you want to leave Blended and you want to go do this? I was like, no, I'm just telling you I was like, we have a toddler and I want a little baby. And you're really good with our toddler and I'll go raise our little baby. Like that was my analogy. I'm like, it's not, I want a mistress on the side that I'm going to go looking for. I want another baby with you. And she was like, oh my God, your analogy is insane. But she was like, I get it. It helped her a lot understand like where I was coming from. And when I told her the approach to Nez, which was this idea around like occasion-based deodorant, like how you sweat is differently when you're moving around versus when you're nervous, and thinking about it in that way, she was like, oh, that's really interesting. And she was like, look, here's the deal. You've been using aluminum-free for, at that point, it had been like, I don't know, 8-9 years or whatever when I first had the nugget of an idea of Nez. And she's like, I use aluminum-based deodorant. Like, I can't smell. I don't want to smell. BO is my pet peeve. Like, so whatever you develop, I have to be able to use it because I'm not going to be a co-founder of a brand that I don't stand behind. Like, it's not authentic, obviously. And like, and it's not our ethos. And I was like, yeah, of course. And so I was like, all right, I'm going to get to developing here and stuff. And I knew it was going to be a much higher hurdle because my body is used to aluminum free and all these things. And then COVID hit. And I was just starting to develop. So I was like, I built a deodorant wall in my house of everything that was on the market and stuff. And I started sending her products to try, samples that I was developing and stuff like that. And it was, in those days when you're like wiping down everything and stuff and letting it sit there for a minute. And, we finally hit what we thought were the winning formulas. And she's never gone back. Like, she wears it every day and loves it and stuff. And so it really was like the formulas, the fragrance, the packaging, the whole experience. We wanted to change the idea of how you think about deodorant. Like Nez is actually Zen spelled backwards. It's also, it's pronounced nay, but the spelling of the French word for nose. So the fragrance experience was really important to us. This idea of like play on words, happiness, fitness, sexiness, joyfulness. Like there are a lot of Nez's. So we always say like if you look up the suffix NESS in the dictionary, it says a state of being, and that's what we want. We want Nez to be a state of being. It's your lifestyle deodorant brand, made for how you live your life. And it's been a journey. We soft launched it almost, 15 months ago, just direct to consumer. The world has shifted on how direct to the consumer works in certain categories. Lots of changes in how Meta works and Google works and stuff. But the good news is, fingers crossed, next year, we've got a lot of retail interest in the brand. So, hopefully we start to see this on, easy access to buy everywhere.
Well, I've been wearing aluminum free for years.
Yeah.
So, and I will say, I've tried a lot of brands. A lot of them don't work. A lot of the ones with baking soda.
Yes, they cause irritation on skin, and ours is baking soda free, not just aluminum free, but baking soda free. All the frees, but still really effective, and stuff. Because yes, baking soda can be a really effective ingredient, but it also can be a skin irritant for some people. Like, it's not for me personally, but I knew it was for others. Yeah. So I wanted to make something that was very universally accepted.
Which is awesome. And would you say that from your experience at Blended, that you have been able to work with enough brands to see really the ones that hit and why they hit, and see the ones that fail? And on top of that, have you worked with companies that have just not done well?
I think I have a really good eye of, being able to understand what helped drive success for a brand. And especially in where we play a role in that wheel of success, like what we did that actually drove tangible results for the brand, whether it was awareness, whether it was true conversion, whether it was EMV, like whatever the goal was, like, because awareness and EMV are usually a lagging indicator of conversion down the line. It's not immediate, but it will result in it eventually. And then I can see where brands misstep and don't listen to guidance that we're giving them. And I'd say, fortunately, we haven't worked on any brands that have been a failure, knock on wood, but like, there's certainly strategies that we've done that I'm like, this one wasn't as successful as it probably should have been, but it's because like, I'll give an example. Like, influencer marketing is pretty complex now, and that like everyone does it, right? It's table stakes. You're a brand, you got to do it. It's what I always associated as to what print media was 15 years ago, 20 years ago. Like, it was your brand, you do print advertising, you run your books, like Allure, Glamour, blah, blah, blah. Now it's like this influencer, this, podcast host, this person, this, like, it's a different book. It's like a different form of a book list, but it's a people list. And I call it the mushy middle. You either spend very little and you go about it in a grassroots way and you seed a lot and you find interesting ways, like the way you got it in the whatever right event that I happened to sample at, and you discover the brand and you go that route and you do a lot of that and you sort of put your budget in that. Or you have to spend the right amount. Like, a small test gets you nowhere. I just literally said this to a brand the other day that was like, I think we're going to spend $40,000 on influencer marketing. And I was like, please don't do that. Please put that back into either paid media or into more samples, or if you have $40,000 for this launch and you have $40,000 for the next launch and $40,000 for the following one, bundle that together to $120,000 and put it towards whichever one of these is the most important of these launches that you think you can drive the most impact, because the test is doomed, because it's not enough level to get the volume of conversation going, right? Because you're either going to get too few influencers of a certain level and then it doesn't hit, or you're going to get like smaller micro influencers, but you're still not going to have enough volume of them, because then you need you need a lot of them, 100 of them or whatever, to get the conversation really going, especially on TikTok. So we really pride ourselves on being very honest with clients about, like, this is the way you should do it. Certainly we have clients that push back and they're like, no, I really want to do it this way. Yeah. And obviously at the end of the day, they're the client. So of course we're going to do what the client wants. Our job is to give our best advice and counsel. And in most cases they listen. Sometimes they don't. And then, if the strategy is successful, great. Like, the client was absolutely right. And it's their win. And if it's not, it's never like, I told you so. I mean, we take accountability for it, but we do go back always and say, look, like, we advised you on where there were potential cautions around this approach, and so let's talk this through so that we can improve on it together, and like everything like that. And so it was amazing. Like, today, before I met you, I was at an event for a client that we've worked with for years, and they used to do a lot of events, and then they sort of had focused on other things, and now they're back to doing events, and they really appreciate that we kept pushing them and said, you were a fast leader in the category, and now you've fallen back a little bit because there's been a lot of entrants in the category, and you need to do this again. And they were like, yeah, our management's not super into it and stuff, but we hear you and we believe in it. And they advocated internally, and now they're doing it, and like, it's working for them in such a big way. And that made me happy that like our pushing was not seen as like, oh, our agency's pushing us to do this stuff. Like, we're not trying to spend their money for the sake of spending money. We want to get these results. We take so much pride in delivering for our clients.
So you're obviously very passionate, which is amazing because you're so successful, but that you still probably have the same passion at 20, 25.
Yes. Absolutely.
How it doesn't go away.
It doesn't go away.
How much has mentorship impacted you? Did you have mentors?
Yeah, I have some really great mentors in my life, and I feel inspired that I have people that consider me their mentor now too. Like, it's such a amazing thing when you go from being a Jedi to a Yoda and you're like, oh my God, like, wait, like, someone sees me as that too now. And so one of my most significant mentors is a woman who was very senior when I was at L'Oreal already. Like, she was the president of the group that I worked in. And like, when she'd walk through the office, it's like, Carol Hamilton, like, it was like our version of a Miranda Priestley type thing, like, are my nails done, is this done, like, type of stuff. She was always dressed to the nines. This woman, Carol Hamilton, who's an icon in beauty now. Like, she is still at L'Oreal, runs all of acquisition, it's sort of head of US acquisitions, and like their venture fund, helped build the L'Oreal West office, has had several roles at L'Oreal over the years, but she was already senior when I was at L'Oreal, continued to become even more senior. And I remember I got to work on a small project, a very specific project for her. I got plucked out of my role for a year, and it was like, oh, you're going to work with Carol Hamilton on this project. And it was like a whole like task force, and I was like, oh, okay. I was like, but it's not like what I came here to do. But like the role, like the specific project was very different than brand marketing, and so I was a little like, okay, but I was like, I guess it's for Carol, so you don't say no. Like you get the exposure. That's so amazing. And it was such a great experience because it was really retail focused. And I got to learn a lot about the retail world and get to know her better. But just by a sheer set of events, like, you know, after I resigned from L'Oreal, because she was, you know, dear enough to sort of check in with me and make sure that there was nothing L'Oreal could do to sort of, you know, see if there was something to change my mind. And I was like, no, I just need to go do this because, and I said to her, I said, because I want to be you. And it's going to take a really long time to be you here. And I respect that. You're L'Oreal. It should take a long time. Like, sure, no one becomes you overnight. But in this small little business, I get to be you, you know, faster. So I always send her products every time when we launched the brand. I would send her like this thing. You just wanted you to see what I'm working on and stuff. And she'd always send me a note back. When she heard I got sick, she sent me this card. Like, I mean, it was like a giant card. I remember the doorman, like, we couldn't fit in the mailbox in New York. It's the doorman gave me this giant card. And it was just so thoughtful because she was very involved with Slim Kettering, which is where I was being treated. And she was like, if there's anything you need, let me know. And it was just very thoughtful. And so I invited her to my remission party. And she came, and our friendship blossomed from there. And she's still continued to be a mentor, and she's done so many things. So she's played a huge role for me. The people at EOS, the founders at EOS were very, very impactful for me. And even one of my first bosses, like true bosses at L'Oreal, is like an older sister to me now. And like our paths have shifted a bit. Like now she sees me as a mentor. She's like, wait, but I learned so much from you. Like you joke that I'm like your older, like, yes, like, but she's like, yes, I was one of your first bosses, but like she took a different pathway with her career and also then took some time off to focus on our family and stuff. That she was like, I learned from you now. Like, I come to you for marketing advice. I come from this. So, like, you know, the tables shift and we all learn from each other. And that's why I always tell people who work who I work with that, like, you can learn from everyone around you. It is a 360 learning environment. Title means nothing. Experience comes from all walks of life. So please be open to it. Do not get caught up into, like, there's people that come across where it's still like, you know, you can tell that they don't think they're talking to the boss. So they act a certain way, or they think this person's not something. And, you know, I actually had someone report to me at EOS who was, I don't know, 12 years my senior and a man, right? So I was like maybe 33, 34 years old. He was 45, gray hair, bald, like, you know, looked like my boss. In another world, he probably would have been. And we'd sit in meetings, and everyone would address him. And I started using that as a test to see if I wanted to do business with those agencies or those vendors or anything like that, because it's like before anything, they just automatically assume that was the boss. Sure. And then, you know, like I'd let them sort of do their thing for a minute, and then I'd be like, why don't we do some introductions? So I'm Sherry. I'm the head of marketing here. This is, you know, this person, and this is his role. You know, we'll be, you know, and then all of a sudden it sort of shift, and I'm like, oh, so now that you know I'm the boss, like now I matter. Like I should have mattered whether I was the assistant in the room, the note taker, the coffee girl, the whatever it is, because I guarantee you the note taker becomes the boss tomorrow.
Yeah. And it's the same, right? If you're presenting to people, you should present the same way you would to one person.
Exactly, to anyone.
To 5,000.
Everyone's ideas are equally warranted.
Someone asked me the other day, how do you ask someone to be your mentor?
Yeah.
Sherry, how do you, or do you not ask someone to be your mentor?
You do. If it's not happening, like if you haven't organically sort of found that relationship and stuff, like, you know, and you kind of want more of a formalized mentor thing, or you want to make where there's someone you like really look up to and stuff, and you feel like their career kind of mimics kind of where you want to go. I've had people ask me all the time, like, I'd love to, you know, meet with you more regularly and things like that. And I think that's the way you do it, is sort of saying, hey, look, I think your pathway has been so inspiring, the way you are, how you, maybe how you grew up, whatever it is, saying to them, hey, like, is there any way, I know you're so busy, but would it be possible that we could have like quarterly check-ins, just where I can come and ask you a couple of questions and things like that. And I think that's the most simplest way. And you can be flexible. If we can do quarterly check-ins, because I don't want to be intrusive on your time, but that would be good if it's better to do it either email and I send you my questions in advance. Like, different people have different things. Like, there's a lot of people that also reach out to me through, people go to certain schools, especially business school, because of the network, the alumni network. And Harvard particularly really instills in you that network. Like, it's a big part of our community at Harvard Business School. It's like the alumni network is what they're known for. It's why a lot of people go. And so you're very ingrained at that school that when people reach out to you from the network, you respond. Like, you don't embarrass the network, like, or what we stand for, and that, like, you're supposed to be able to reach out to anyone with that in that alumni database and hope that person responds to you, no matter what level they are, who they were when they graduated. And so I really honor that aspect of the school, like that, because like when I've reached out to people, I remember when I was at EOS, I reached out to the CEO of Kimberly-Clark. That's a massive company, because I needed a contact at Kleenex. I wanted to do a collaboration with, like, about your purse essentials with EOS lip balm and Kleenex. And I thought it would be like this cool purse pack. It was like this crazy idea that I had. And I was like, who do I know at Kleenex? I was like, the CEO of Kimberly-Clark. It's absurd. But I emailed him. And he wrote to me and he put me in touch with the brand manager at Kleenex. And we did that collab. Yeah. Like, that actually happened. And it was the coolest thing. And so I'm like, if that guy could respond to me, like, I can respond to anyone. And so, like, recently someone reached out to me, another like South Asian person, graduated very recently, had started an agency and was like, wanted to chat. I have been exceptionally, like, in a great way, but exceptionally busy in the last couple months, like, and traveling a lot. And so my time was just much more limited to do Zooms or calls unless they were already on the books and stuff. And so I sent her a note back and I said, hey, first of all, congratulations on what you're building. And I'm really sorry. Like, right now, I am being very focused on what I have right now. I'm trying to be very true to myself and boundaries and not overextending. Come May, my schedule will be more open, but I don't want you to think that I'm trying to be like punch you out. Like, I feel like that's what that sounds like. If you can, feel free to email me your questions and I will do my best to give you answers over email. And she sent me her questions and I responded to all of them. And I wrote really detailed email, like, responses back. And she wrote back and she's like, oh my God, like, this is so helpful. Yeah. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. And I was like, yeah, feel free to reach out to me in May and, like, we can get something on the books or we can do it later. Like, so shoot your shot, like, ask the questions, reach out to people, use LinkedIn, like, God, use LinkedIn, slide into DMs. Like, that's how we met. Yeah. Like, it's like, that's how the world works today. And, like, most people want to connect. Like, we're built to connect.
Yeah. And also, just to clarify, like, the intensity of how serious I take someone I want to meet or to be mentored by. Originally, I think I was supposed to, your assistant or rep.
Yes, yeah.
And there was multiple times where, like, you couldn't do, you're too busy. And I was persistent.
Yeah.
And I didn't take any, like, offense.
No.
But and it's not like, I did not think, and of course, like, why would you? You were not going to reach back out and be like, hey, I just remembered this 4 months ago.
Right.
So I
follow up, like, follow up and stuff, because again, like, I also have gotten, so I have a personal thing that I've been trying to work on. I'm a people pleaser. So, like, yes, like, I do have a hard time saying no and stuff like that. And so I do get solicited a lot for other things, like, wealth management or like legal services or like other things and stuff like that. And so a resolution, I hate the word resolution, but a promise I made myself at the beginning of this year was I was going to start to be more direct so that I also don't spend, like, people know, like, that and stuff like that of, like, hey, I appreciate the interest. I think what you do is amazing. This really is not a fit. this is a pass for now. Like, this is a pass. Like, and when people sometimes are like, oh, well, is there a better time to reach out? You know, I'm very honest to be like, oh, really? Not really. Like, this just really isn't it.
To laugh.
Like, yeah, so not really. Like, and like,
no.
And I really felt so guilty the first time I sent one of those. It was a wealth manager, and I was like, I'm not looking to change. Like I'm not looking, like, I don't have gazillions of dollars to be managed. Like, at least not yet. Hopefully one day this brand will sell and like stuff, you know? Like, I was like, I don't need, like, this isn't what I don't need this, like, and stuff. And like, I'm not in a position, like, I don't want to do this. Like, this is just not the right use of my time. And they actually wrote back and they were like, I so appreciate your candor because it really helps me in focusing where I should spend my time too. So, as guilty as I felt in sending that note, like that, like it was, I don't know, that it would be perceived harsh and stuff. Like they were like, they felt happy that they knew, okay, take her off a follow-up list, and stuff. And so I really also encourage that type of honesty. I think there is generations that are way better at this, like than, you know, my sort of Gen X millennial, whatever we call ourselves, the borderline millennial Gen Xers, like, where we were born to be people pleasers and we have a hard time saying no and stuff. But it's just, you run your, people like me who don't say no often enough, we run ourselves into the ground and then we do ourselves a disservice. So.
I just like to know, like, why. You know, if someone's like, I'm passive, like,
why?
And so I'm a big advocate, like, if somebody passes, say, like, why? And if I don't get a response, I literally was like, hey, I'm following up. Like, why did you reject this idea? Because it helps me.
It helps you better craft yourself, too. I agree with that, too. And I agree with that wholeheartedly of, like, give feedback and stuff. Like, and, like I said, even, like, for this, like, example of, like, you know, whatever, it's like, here's why. Like, here's why this is not a fit at this time. Like, here, you know, like, here's why I don't think it's the best use of your time or my time. So, you know, let's move on and stuff. Like, so also that's, like, don't be shy to, like, give people feedback and let them know, because let them be better at targeting and understanding. Or maybe there was a misunderstanding. Also, they didn't understand something. Like, you know, like it's also like a big thing I'll say when you're fundraising for a brand, right? Like that is one of the most like soul sucking experiences. It's like, you know, like you're out there and you're like peddling and dialing for dollars, like, right? Like you're just like casting a wide net. You're trying to find people to give you the time of day and stuff. And there's only so much you can communicate in an email without it becoming a novel. And then no one wants to read that, but then you're trying to keep it concise, but then it's not enough information as to why whatever you're trying to pitch to them is disruptive and interesting and stuff. And, you know, sometimes you just don't hear back, and sometimes it's just like, no, this is not of interest. And it's like, again, why?
Yeah.
Like, give me that insight. Like, why? Like, and you know, it's like, it's just so much more helpful when people do.
Sure, this is my favorite interview. I am so glad I got you on this.
Oh, I'm just so glad I worked.
What makes you fearless? How do you define fearlessness?
It's that worst case scenario thing. Like, it's like thinking in that way of what's worst case scenario. I think that has made me fearless because, you know, like saying, oh, what's that worst case? Like, I'm going to be looking for a new job, or I'm going to be doing this. And I, you know, often when friends even come to me, and then we go to each other for advice, but like, you know, when a friend comes to me, and like a friend came to me recently about her job she wasn't liking, and she's like, I don't know, I think I should quit. I'm like, dude, you've been complaining about your job for over a year. I think you should quit. Like, and she's like, yeah, I just don't know. What if I don't find another one? I'm like, okay, let's break it down. Like, how long can you be okay not having a job? Like, before it starts to become really stressful for you. And we broke that down, and it was a good amount of time. She has good savings and stuff like that. She's a partner that, there's other things. And so I was like, so you're fine. Like, you're going to find another job in that time period, and you can consult and you can do stuff and everything. So I always say, like, go through worst case scenario. I think that definitely makes people fearless. And like, I think there's also that idea of like writing down, like, what would I do if failure didn't result in anything bad? Like, would I do this? Because then it tells you what your heart's telling you and stuff that you really want to do. And then the other thing that makes me fearless is putting myself in environments where I can be me. Like, and I will say, like, the New York to LA transition was exceptionally hard for me because people in LA are very different than New Yorkers, as we talked about, or East Coasters. It's also, the city's evolved a lot over the last several years, but like it's a city that's built up of relationships. And who you know gets you far, how you look gets you far. Like it's just a city that's built on different things. Like again, it's evolving and it has evolved and it continues to evolve, but it traditionally has built off of how you look and who you know. New York was built on what you do and how you do it. And so it was really hard for me because I'm like, I'm not white and blonde and of a certain body type. And I, was like, oh, I just feel like, I felt out of sorts with myself and stuff. And then, I'm not built on relationships in Los Angeles and things like that. And so I started to feel very uncomfortable in the room again. And I hadn't felt that way in a really long time because in New York, I just existed and I was good. And a couple of years ago, I realized how much that was watering me down and that I was becoming like a shell of myself, to be honest. Like, or I was like, wow, I am like, who am I? And it was a girlfriend of mine who said it to me, and one of my New York girlfriends who was like, I don't know who this Sherry is. Like, what, like, who is this? This isn't the Sherry I know. And I was like, I did some soul searching, with a professional coach and stuff of why am I feeling this way? And I then realized I had to push myself out of that and make sure I was back in environments where I could feel good, and also really make sure I was doing the work for myself to remember I am this. Even if I don't have this, it doesn't make me any less powerful or worthy or knowledgeable in the room. And so that knowledge of that insecurity of mine was power in being fearless.
Sherry, where can everyone find you on social media as well as Nez?
Yeah, so I'm Sherry, and my last name's Jhawar, on Instagram, so you can follow me there. And Nez is Nezcare, Nezcare on Instagram and TikTok, and Blended Strategy on Instagram. You can find any of us and see what we're doing. You can see what Nez is up to. You can see Blended Strategy. We work with a lot of great clients, and you can see the events that we do. And you can see what I'm up to in life and stuff. So it's great.
And this is the first time I put on deodorant during a podcast, and I have no shame.
I love it. No shame. We want people. I always say it. Why does it mean I'm Pigpen if I put on deodorant? We put on lip balm and lipstick in the middle of the day. Yeah. I'm not an animal because I ate my lipstick at lunch accidentally on my belly,
Fun too. I just love board meeting.
Just swipe it on. Nez up.
I haven't smelled this one.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Nez up. Yeah, it's a really light scent. And stuff that's actually Lauren Bostic's favorite scent. Yeah, it's the board meeting bright.
Oh my god, I love her. No, I like this one actually a lot. Yeah. Now that I smell that.
Yeah.
No, that's amazing. Oh, I'm glad that Skinny Confidential girl, she's into it.
She's into it, yeah. She's actually an investor in the brand and stuff, so she's been awesome. Yeah, it's great.
Oh my god. Okay, I can't wait till I'm rich enough to invest in it because why not sold the brand by then? But
great, we'll invest in the next one together then from your lips too. The higher power years.
Oh my god. You are amazing.
Thank you so much. You're amazing. What you've built has been amazing. The way you're navigating your career has been amazing. Yes. And I think this podcast is absolutely amazing what you bring to young people and people actually of all ages and where they are in their journey to be fearless and make life decisions.
No, that means a lot coming from you. So thank you. And it's so nice to hear your story, just how, what you've tried and also feeling, when I came here, I remember feeling so out of place too.
Yeah.
And so it's just nice to see someone so successful that it feels, imposter syndrome, everyone has it.
Yeah, everyone has it. And that's why I'm so honest about it because I just want everyone to know it's normal.
Yeah. No, so I really